The Champagne Catastrophe. Olivia Reed's hands trembled slightly as she balanced the tray of champagne flutes. The Westmore Gallery's annual spring exhibition was the most prestigious event she had ever catered, and everything needed to be perfect. Her small catering company, Savory Moments, was hanging by a thread financially, and this job could make or break her reputation in New York's competitive culinary scene. "Keep it together, Liv," she whispered to herself, navigating through Manhattan's elite, who were admiring avant-garde sculptures and minimalist paintings with practiced appreciation. The space buzzed with silk dresses, designer suits, and conversations about summer homes in the Hamptons. Olivia, in her simple black uniform, felt invisible, which was exactly how she preferred it. At 32, she had worked too hard to let insecurity derail her now. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun, her warm brown eyes focused on keeping the champagne from sloshing over the crystal rims. That's when she saw him. A tall figure stood alone by a striking blue and gold painting, seemingly lost in thought rather than posing like the others. Something about his quiet presence made her pause. He wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that suggested money, but lacked the flashiness of the other guests. His profile was strong, thoughtful eyes, a straight nose, and the subtle shadow of stubble along his jaw. As Olivia moved toward a group of guests, a woman in stilettos backed into her path without warning. Olivia swerved, stumbled on her sensible heels, and watched in horror as the tray tilted. 3 champagne flutes slid forward like they were in slow motion. The liquid arced through the air and landed with devastating accuracy on the charcoal suit. "Oh my God!" Olivia gasped, mortification flooding her cheeks with heat. "I'm so sorry." The man looked down at his soaked jacket and tie, droplets of champagne clinging to the expensive fabric. Instead of the outrage she expected, his lips curved into a small, surprised smile. "I suppose I should be grateful it wasn't red wine," he said, his voice unexpectedly warm. Olivia frantically pulled napkins from her apron pocket. "I'm so sorry, sir. I'll pay for the dry cleaning, of course. The woman stepped back and... "Breathe," he said, taking a napkin from her shaking hands. "It's just fabric." "Just very expensive fabric," Olivia muttered, dabbing at his tie. She suddenly realized she was touching a stranger's chest and pulled back. "I'm Olivia. Olivia Reed. I run the catering tonight." "Julian," he replied simply, without offering a last name. "And it's really fine." Something in his eyes, a gentle amusement rather than condescension, made her pause. She was used to being invisible or berated by the wealthy, not treated with kindness. "Let me help you clean up," he offered, bending to collect the fallen glasses that miraculously hadn't shattered. "You don't need to do that," Olivia protested. "You're a guest," Julian shrugged. "I've never been good at standing around while others work." As they gathered the glasses, Mia Chen, Olivia's assistant, rushed over. "Liv, everything okay?" "Oh, no." Her eyes widened at Julian's champagne-splattered suit. "It's fine," Julian assured her. "Just a small accident." "Mia, can you handle the West Room for a bit?" Olivia asked. "I need to help Mr.." She paused, realizing she didn't know his last name. "Just Julian is fine," he said. After Mia left, Olivia led Julian to a small back room where the caterers had set up. "I have a stain stick in my bag. It might help until you can get it properly cleaned." As she worked on his jacket, Julian studied the organized chaos of her workspace. "You did all this yourself?" "My company's small but dedicated," Olivia said, focusing on the stain to avoid his gaze. "Tonight's important for us." "The food is exceptional," Julian said. "Especially those little pastry things with the herbs." Olivia looked up in surprise. Few guests actually noticed the food beyond its Instagram potential. Goat cheese tartlets with thyme and honey. "That's my grandmother's recipe." For a moment, they stood close enough that Olivia could smell his cologne, something subtle and woodsy. There was something disarming about him, something that made her forget the disastrous champagne incident. "I should get back," she said reluctantly, stepping away. "Again, I'm so sorry about your suit." Julian smiled. "Sometimes the best connections begin with catastrophe, Olivia Reed." As he walked away, Olivia couldn't help wondering who exactly Julian was, and why, despite her embarrassment, she hoped to see him again. Hidden identities. 3 weeks after the gallery disaster, Olivia stood in the gleaming kitchen of Blackwood Tower, Manhattan's newest architectural marvel. Her catering company had been hired, unexpectedly and last minute, to provide food for an exclusive corporate event on the penthouse floor. The pay was extraordinary, enough to cover 2 months of her struggling business's overhead. "This kitchen is bigger than our entire apartment," whispered Mia, arranging delicate canapes on silver trays. "Focus," Olivia reminded her, though she too was overwhelmed by the sleek, professional kitchen with its panoramic views of Central Park. "Someone very important requested us specifically, and I'm not about to question that miracle." The door swung open, and a woman in a crisp pantsuit entered. "Ms. Reed, I'm Rebecca Sanders, Mr. Blackwood's executive assistant. He'd like to speak with you about tonight's menu." Olivia smoothed her chef's jacket nervously. Julian Blackwood was a legend in tech and real estate, notoriously private and, according to business magazines, ruthlessly brilliant. Why would he want to speak with the caterer? Rebecca led her through corridors of glass and steel to a spacious office with floor-to-ceiling windows. A man stood with his back to the door, gazing out at the city 30 stories below. "Mr. Blackwood, Ms. Reed is here," Rebecca announced before discreetly withdrawing. When the man turned, Olivia's heart skipped. Those thoughtful eyes, that subtle smile. "Julian?" she blurted, then immediately regretted her informality. "Hello, Olivia," he replied, his expression warming. "I was wondering if you'd remember me." "You're Julian Blackwood," she said slowly, the pieces falling into place. "At the gallery you were—" "Just a guest," he finished. "Or that's what I let you believe." Olivia's mind raced. Julian Blackwood, billionaire developer, tech innovator, and apparently the man whose expensive suit she had ruined with champagne. "You funded the exhibition," she realized aloud. "You own the gallery?" Julian gestured to a seating area. "I prefer to attend events without the Blackwood name preceding me. It changes how people interact." "So you lied to me," Olivia said, remaining standing. "I omitted," Julian corrected, a hint of challenge in his eyes. "Would you have treated me the same way if you'd known who I was?" "Yes," she replied without hesitation. "I'd have still been mortified about ruining your suit regardless of your net worth." Something in Julian's expression shifted. Surprise, perhaps respect. "That's why I requested your company for tonight. The food at the gallery was exceptional and—" He hesitated. "I enjoyed our conversation." "That wasn't a conversation. That was me apologizing profusely while having an internal panic attack." Julian laughed, a genuine sound that softened his composed demeanor. Refreshingly honest, as I remembered. Against her better judgment, Olivia felt her irritation fading. "So what happens now, Mr. Blackwood?" "Julian, please. And what happens now is, you create another exceptional menu. I host a successful event. And perhaps afterward, we could have a proper conversation. One without spilled champagne." Olivia should have politely declined. Mixing business with pleasure was unprofessional, especially with a client of Julian's caliber. But something about the way he looked at her, like he saw past her chef's uniform to the person beneath, made her nod. "I'll consider it," she said, "after I ensure tonight is perfect." "I have no doubt it will be," Julian replied, his confidence in her both flattering and intimidating. As the evening progressed, Olivia watched Julian from the kitchen, how he commanded the room without raising his voice, how his employees respected but didn't fear him, how occasionally his eyes would find hers across the space, with a look that made her forget the elaborate canapé she was plating. When the event wound down, Julian appeared at the kitchen door. "Walk with me?" The rooftop garden was peaceful after the noise of the party, city lights twinkling beneath them like earthbound stars. "Your food was the highlight of the evening," Julian said, his shoulder occasionally brushing hers as they walked. "You have remarkable talent, Olivia." "It's just food," she replied modestly. "It's never just food," Julian countered. "It's memory, comfort, connection. The way your grandmother's tartlets brought me back to summers in Provence." Olivia stopped. "You've been to Provence?" "Many times. though never with someone who might appreciate it properly. The implication hung in the air between them, tantalizing and dangerous. Olivia knew she was standing at a precipice that whatever happened next would change everything. "Why me?" she asked finally. "You could have anyone." Julian stepped closer. "Because when I'm with you, I'm not Julian Blackwood, billionaire. I'm just Julian. And that," he paused, his voice softening, "is rarer than you might think." Worlds apart. 6 weeks into their relationship, Olivia stood in Julian's penthouse bathroom, staring at her reflection in a mirror larger than her first apartment's entire wall. She'd just spent the night, something that was becoming increasingly common, and the contrast between their lives had never felt more stark than this morning. Her simple cotton dress hung next to his tailored shirts in the closet. Her drugstore moisturizer sat beside products with price tags that made her wince. Everything in Julian's world was designed for effortless luxury, a concept entirely foreign to Olivia, who had grown up counting pennies and working since she was 15. "You're overthinking again," Julian said, appearing in the doorway with 2 coffee cups. He wore only pajama bottoms, his chest bare and his dark hair still rumpled from sleep. It was these unguarded moments that Olivia treasured most, when the powerful businessman receded, revealing just the man. "How can you tell?" she asked, accepting the coffee. "You get this little crease right here," he said, touching between her eyebrows. "What's bothering you?" Olivia hesitated. "Your charity gala tonight. I'm not sure I belong there." Julian's expression softened. "Of course you do. You'll be with me." "That's exactly it, Julian. I'll be with you, Julian Blackwood, and everyone will wonder what you're doing with someone like me. Someone brilliant, talented, and genuine?" He countered. "I'm the lucky one." Olivia set down her cup. "Last week, that Society columnist referred to me as your working-class fling. Your board members barely hide their disapproval. Even your friends look at me like I'm some curiosity you'll eventually tire of." "They don't matter," Julian insisted, but Olivia could see the slight tightening around his eyes, his tell when he was holding something back. "They do to you," she said gently. "Your image, your company, they matter. And I'm complicating that." Julian ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "What do you want me to say? That sometimes my life comes with complications? That people judge what they don't understand? Yes, there's pressure, but I choose you, Olivia, every day." The words warmed her, but the nagging doubt remained. They came from different worlds, and sometimes no amount of chemistry could bridge that gap. Later that evening, as Olivia entered the ballroom of the Plaza Hotel on Julian's arm, she felt the weight of curious stares. Her dress, the most expensive she'd ever owned, still paled beside the designer gowns surrounding her. Julian seemed oblivious, his hand steady at the small of her back as he guided her through the crowd. "Julian, darling." A woman with perfect silver hair and diamonds at her throat approached. "We've missed you at the symphony board meetings." "Mrs. Whitmore," Julian greeted her politely. "May I introduce Olivia Reed?" The woman's gaze flicked over Olivia with practiced assessment. "Ah, yes, the caterer, isn't it? How novel." Olivia forced a smile. "It's nice to meet you." "Olivia is an exceptional chef and business owner," Julian said, his voice carrying a subtle edge. "How enterprising," Mrs. Whitmore replied. "Julian always had an eye for potential." As the evening progressed, similar interactions repeated. Julian handled each with diplomatic grace, but Olivia felt increasingly like an exhibit, the commoner who had somehow captured the billionaire's attention. When Julian excused himself to speak with investors, Olivia retreated to a quiet corner. A server offered champagne, and she couldn't help but smile at the irony. Champagne had started this whole unlikely relationship. "He won't marry you, you know." Olivia turned to find a striking woman in her 40s, emanating the easy confidence of old money. "Excuse me?" "Julian," the woman clarified. "Men like him might play with women like you, but they marry within their circle. I should know. We were engaged once." Olivia's stomach dropped. "You must be Caroline. He mentioned me?" She seemed pleased. "Did he tell you he ended our engagement just 2 months before the wedding?" "Julian has commitment issues, dear. When things get serious, He retreats to his work. Before Olivia could respond, Julian appeared at her side. His expression was pleasant, but his eyes were cold as they landed on Caroline. "I see you've met Olivia," he said evenly. Caroline smiled sweetly. "Just girl talk, reminiscing." After she walked away, Olivia turned to Julian. "You never told me you were engaged." "It was years ago," he said, tension evident in his jaw. "It wasn't relevant." "Your ex-fiancé isn't relevant?" Olivia challenged. "What else isn't relevant, Julian? What else don't I know about you?" Julian reached for her hand, but Olivia stepped back. "I need some air." On the terrace, the night air was cool against her flushed skin. New York glittered below, beautiful and indifferent to her turmoil. "She's wrong, you know," Julian said, joining her at the railing. "About us, is she?" Olivia asked. "We've been living in a bubble, Julian. But this," she gestured to the opulent ballroom behind them, "this is your real world, and I don't fit here." "Then maybe this shouldn't be my world," Julian said quietly. Olivia looked at him, really looked at him, the man who had everything but often seemed lonely in a crowded room. "You can't escape who you are." "No," Julian agreed, "but I can choose who I want to become." He took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Caroline is my past, a relationship based on convenience and status that made us both miserable. You're different, Olivia. You challenge me. You see me. And what happens when that's not enough? When the differences between us become too much?" Instead of answering, Julian pulled her close, his kiss deep and urgent, as if trying to convey what words couldn't. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I don't have all the answers," he admitted. "But I know that my life was perfectly ordered and completely empty before you spilled champagne on my favorite suit." Despite herself, Olivia laughed softly. "Your favorite? You never told me that part." "Some details are better left unsaid," he murmured against her hair. "Come home with me. The real me, not whatever version of Julian Blackwood they think they know in there." As they slipped away from the gala, leaving whispers in their wake, Olivia realized that perhaps their different worlds weren't keeping them apart. They were pushing them closer together, forcing them to create something entirely new between them. Unexpected revelations. 3 months into their relationship, Olivia woke to an empty bed and the sound of Julian's voice from his home office. It was barely dawn, unusual even for his early rising habits. Wrapping herself in his discarded shirt from the night before, she padded quietly down the hallway. "I don't care what it takes, Thomas. Contain it." Julian's voice was tense, stripped of its usual composure. No statements to the press, nothing. Olivia hesitated outside the door, not wanting to eavesdrop but concerned by his tone. "Yes, I'm aware of what the documents claim," Julian continued. "It's fabricated. You know I would never—" He paused, noticing Olivia in the doorway. "I need to go. Handle it." He ended the call, his expression shifting to something carefully neutral. "I'm sorry if I woke you." "Is everything okay?" she asked, noting the tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers gripped the edge of his desk. "Just business," Julian said dismissively. "Nothing for you to worry about." The words stung. After months together, after whispered confessions and shared vulnerabilities, he was still keeping parts of himself locked away. "Don't do that," Olivia said quietly. "Don't shut me out." Julian sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's complicated, Liv. Try me." He studied her for a moment, then gestured to the sofa. "There's a situation with one of my companies in Singapore. A former employee is claiming I authorized unethical practices, underpaid labor, environmental violations. It's completely false, but the press will run with it regardless." "And you think I wouldn't understand that?" Olivia asked. "I think you shouldn't have to deal with my problems," Julian replied. "Your catering business is taking off. You're finally getting the recognition you deserve. The last thing you need is to be dragged into a scandal." Before Olivia could respond, Julian's phone chimed with a news alert. His expression darkened as he read the screen. "Too late," he muttered, turning the phone to show her. The headline made her stomach drop. "Blackwood airs secret scandal. ethical violations, and his working-class lover. Below was a photo of them leaving a restaurant, Olivia laughing as Julian whispered in her ear. The article suggested their relationship was a calculated distraction from the brewing business scandal. "They're calling me your working-class lover," Olivia said flatly. "The press is cruel. This is exactly what I wanted to protect you from," Julian said, his voice tight with anger. "I'm so sorry, Olivia." "I don't need protection," she replied firmly. "I need honesty, partnership." Julian's phone rang again, his head of public relations, no doubt scrambling to control the damage. The bubble they had created was bursting, reality intruding with all its sharp edges. "Take the call," Olivia said, standing. "We'll talk later." But later never came. Julian was swept into emergency meetings, and Olivia had a major catering event she couldn't postpone. By evening, when she finally returned to her own apartment, a place that felt increasingly unfamiliar after so many nights at Julian's, the story had exploded. For hours, the small apartment became command central. Rebecca had traced the false claims to a competitor trying to sabotage Julian's company before a major product launch. The security team had evidence of doctored documents. What they didn't have was a way to shift the narrative. "The public sees me as cold, calculating," Julian explained. "They're predisposed to believe I'm capable of exploitation." Olivia, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke. "Because you've always kept your distance. Your philanthropy happens behind the scenes. Your personal life is a mystery. People fill in the blanks with the worst assumptions." Julian looked at her with dawning realization. "You're right. I've spent so long protecting my privacy that I've become a cipher." "So change that," Olivia said simply. "Let them see the Julian I know." By morning, they had a plan. Julian would host a press conference, something he'd always avoided, but with a twist. It would be held at Hope Kitchen, the community food program where Olivia volunteered weekly, teaching cooking skills to underprivileged youth. Julian had been anonymously funding the program for years, long before meeting Olivia. As dawn broke, with strategy mapped out and the crisis at least temporarily contained, Julian pulled Olivia onto the small balcony of her apartment. "I should have told you everything immediately," he said quietly. "I'm not used to having someone I can trust completely." Olivia's heart ached at the vulnerability in his admission. "That's what relationships are, Julian. Sharing the burdens, not just the easy parts." "I know that now," he said, taking her hands in his. "When I saw what was happening to your business because of me—" "Not because of you," Olivia corrected. "Because of other people's narrow minds." Julian smiled faintly. "Nevertheless, it made me realize I never want to be the reason you can't achieve your dreams." "My dreams have been evolving lately," Olivia admitted, "and you're part of them now." As the sun rose over the city, Julian pulled her close, his kiss a promise of something deeper than the attraction that had first drawn them together. They had weathered their first real storm, emerging stronger for the honesty it had forced between them. "Whatever happens next," Julian murmured against her hair, "we face it together." Part 5. Finding Balance 1, year after the champagne incident. Olivia stood in the kitchen of Hope Haven, the community culinary center that had risen from her partnership with Julian. What had begun as damage control during the scandal had evolved into something far more meaningful, a place where aspiring chefs from underserved communities could learn, create, and connect. "Flavor needs balance," she explained to the group of teenagers gathered around the industrial stove. "Too much of anything, salt, acid, sweetness, overwhelms everything else." "Like life," Julian added, entering with a crate of fresh produce from the rooftop garden he'd funded. The teens greeted him with easy familiarity. To them, he wasn't a billionaire tech mogul, but simply Mr. B, the guy who fixed the equipment and asked thoughtful questions about their cooking. Olivia watched him interact with the students, marveling at how much had changed. The scandal had ultimately been proven false, but its aftermath had transformed both their lives in unexpected ways. Julian had stepped back from daily operations at Blackwood Enterprises, appointing a CEO he trusted while he focused on the company's philanthropic arm. Olivia had pivoted her catering business toward training and empowerment. hiring graduates from Hope Haven and developing an incubator program for food entrepreneurs from marginalized communities. Their professional worlds had found a harmonious intersection, but their personal relationship had required more delicate balancing. "We'll finish at 3, Olivia told the students as the class wrapped up. "Tomorrow we tackle desserts." As the teens departed, Julian came behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "They adore you," he murmured against her neck. "The feeling is mutual," she replied, leaning into his embrace. "This place is everything I never knew I wanted." "About that," Julian said, a hint of nervousness in his voice. "I have something to show you." He led her up to the rooftop garden, lush with herbs and vegetables despite the approach of autumn. The space had been transformed with string lights and candles, a small table set for 2 overlooking the city skyline. "Julian," Olivia breathed. "What is this?" "Sit," he urged gently. "Please." As they sat across from each other, Julian poured 2 glasses of champagne, the same vintage she had spilled on him that fateful night. "For someone who dislikes grand gestures, this feels suspiciously romantic," Olivia teased. "I'm evolving," Julian replied with a small smile. "You've shown me that some moments deserve celebration." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "This past year has been transformative. Before you, I was successful but isolated. Wealthy but empty. You changed everything, Olivia." "We changed each other," she corrected softly. "You helped me see my worth beyond my work." Julian's thumb traced circles on her palm, a gesture that had become a silent communication between them. "I've been thinking about what comes next for us." Olivia's heart quickened. "And?" "I bought a brownstone in the West Village," Julian said, surprising her. "It needs renovation, but it has a commercial kitchen on the ground floor. Perfect for continuing your classes and developing recipes. You bought a building?" Olivia blinked, processing. "Without discussing it with me?" Julian's expression faltered slightly. "I wanted it to be a surprise. But it's not just for you, it's for us. A home that belongs to both our worlds." Understanding dawned on Olivia. "You're asking me to move in with you?" "I'm asking for more than that," Julian said quietly, reaching into his pocket. He placed a small velvet box on the table between them. Olivia's breath caught. "Julian, I'm not proposing, not yet," he clarified quickly. "This isn't an engagement ring." Curious, Olivia opened the box to find an antique key attached to a simple silver chain. "It's the key to the brownstone," Julian explained. "I want you to see it, to make it ours before we decide anything else. But I want you to know that I'm ready. For a home together. For a future together. For whatever comes next." Tears pricked at Olivia's eyes. This wasn't the grand public gesture many might expect from a man of Julian's wealth and status. Instead, it was intimate, thoughtful, perfectly them. "You once told me that the best flavors develop slowly," Julian continued. "I think the same is true for the best relationships. Ours hasn't been rushed or forced. It's grown naturally into something extraordinary." Olivia rose from her chair, moving around the table to sit on Julian's lap. She cradled his face in her hands, seeing past the successful businessman to the man who had learned to be vulnerable with her. "Yes," she whispered against his lips, "to the brownstone. To building something together. To taking our time and doing it right." His kiss was tender at first, then deepening with promise. When they finally parted, Julian's eyes held a question. "What?" Olivia asked, smiling. "You're not worried anymore? About our different worlds?" Olivia considered this, twisting the chain with the key between her fingers. "I think we've created our own world, Julian. Not yours, not mine, ours. And it's better than anything I could have imagined alone." As night fell over the city, they remained on the rooftop, planning their future among the herbs and vegetables they had planted together. They talked of the brownstone, of expanding Hope Haven, of someday perhaps a family of their own. Not rushing, but not holding back either. Their beginning had been accidental, a spilled drink, a case of mistaken identity. But what had grown between them was deliberate, nurtured through challenges and differences to become something rare and precious. "You know," Julian mused as they watched the stars appear above the city lights. I never thanked you properly. For what? For spilling champagne on my favorite suit, he replied with a grin. Best thing that ever happened to me, Olivia laughed. The sound carrying across the rooftop garden they had built together. A perfect symbol of how beauty could flourish in unexpected places when given the right care and attention. To happy accidents, she said, raising her glass. Julian's eyes shone with love as he clinked his glass against hers. And to the courage to turn them into something lasting.